Hello. Merci d'être des nôtres. Avant d'aller plus loin, je tiens à remercier tout spécialement
particularly to thank the people of this region who contributed to the success of this summit. I've already said that we chose Charlevoix because of the people who live here. I wanted leaders and their teams to have the experience of the legendary hospitality of the people of this region, and that's exactly what I've seen in the last few days. Thank you to all the members of the community, to those who played a role locally, to the team of the Manoir Richelieu, government representatives, and to all Canadians who played a role in this summit running well. Finally, thank you to the autochthonous indigenous communities with whom we work closely throughout this process.
Successful G7 summit here in Charlevoix. This summit was focused on addressing very real and universal challenges and finding lasting solutions that will make a difference in the lives of people. And I'm happy to announce that we've released a joint communiqué by all 7 countries. Je suis très content d'annoncer.
I'm very happy to announce that we have a communiqué from all 7 countries.
Our conversations took place against the backdrop of a rapidly changing economy and growing middle-class anxieties around rising inequality, automation, and equality of opportunity. Anxieties that have eroded trust in our institutions' abilities to deliver for working people. Ahead of the summit, Canada laid out 5 broad themes to help us tackle the root cause of this central economic issue that we all share. We talked about investing in growth that works for everyone and preparing people for the jobs of the future. We reaffirmed our commitment to advance gender equality and work together on climate change, oceans, and clean energy. We spoke of the need to defend our democracies against foreign threats and build a more peaceful and secure world. We are committed to take concrete action to defend our democratic systems from foreign threats and take coordinated action to identify and hold to account those who would do us harm. Now, there is, of course, a diversity of opinions when it comes to charting the path forward. Every leader comes to the table with a different and at times divergent view on the preferred course of action. But leaders arrived here in Charlevoix ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work. And that's exactly what we were able to do. Now, I know you'll know that we had some strong, firm conversations on trade and specifically American tariffs. I reiterated to President Trump that these tariffs threaten to harm industry and workers on both sides of our border. I stand ready to work closely with the President to resolve this dispute swiftly, but as I have consistently said, I will always protect Canadian workers and Canadian interests. We've also made good, genuine progress on a large range of issues over the course of the last few days. So there's a lot that we could cover here, but let me just highlight a few key accomplishments.
We first of all set up the Advisory Council on Gender Equality, whose mandate is to integrate gender equality into the different subjects, activities, and results of this summit. We hope that the Charlevoix G7 will be the beginning of a new tradition which makes gender equality one of its major priorities. France, who will follow us in the presidency next year, has confirmed to us that they will go on with this approach and with this fight. In Canada, as throughout the world, growth of the economy, which has been observed in the last decades, is largely attributable to women who went onto the labor market and transformed it. So if we really want to fight against chronic weak economic growth, the income gap and social inequalities, to truly achieve gender equality, that must be part of our objectives, just as the economy or the environment are. And that's exactly what we have done during this summit.
And today, I'm thrilled to announce that Canada, along with the European Union, Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom, France, and the World Bank, will invest nearly $4 billion to support quality education for women and girls living in crisis, conflict-affected, and fragile states. This funding represents the single largest investment of its kind. In the fight for greater equality, education is key. It gives girls the tools they need to make their own decisions about their future and live the life they want for themselves. When women and girls have an equal chance to learn, grow, and succeed, entire communities benefit. I believe this historic investment in girls' education further speaks to our common resolve to make gender equality a top priority not just this year, but every year. We also welcome the announcement made by the development finance institutions of all G7 nations that they will be investing considerable funds focused on women in developing countries to enhance economic participation and empowerment. This is proof of what we can accomplish by working together. 5 of us also agreed to a plastics charter, which speaks to our common resolve to eradicate plastic pollution. This is an important step towards achieving a life cycle economy in which all plastics would be recycled and repurposed. This is good news not only for the environment, but also for businesses who could stand to benefit from reducing the cost associated to plastic use. Canada will also invest $100 million to rid our oceans of the global plastic pollution. To protect our oceans, we agreed to the G7 Blueprint for Healthy Oceans and Resilient Coastal Communities. Oftentimes, developing nations, including small island states, are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of a changing climate. G7 nations have a role to play in helping these countries mitigate the consequences of and join the fight against climate change, which goes hand in hand with the health of our coasts and oceans. As part of this initiative, Canada will invest $162 million to help build strong and resilient coasts and communities. This will include efforts to build back better after extreme weather events and to help expand renewable energy infrastructure. And finally, we spoke about the future of the economy at length. Innovation is changing how we live and how we work, which brings new challenges and opportunities for working people. One thing that came out of this year's summit was the need to encourage a culture of lifelong learning so that the next job is also a better job. We also recognize that we need to adopt new ways of measuring economic growth. If we want to build economies that work for everyone, it's essential we develop the right tools to monitor progress and address some of the flaws of our current approach. Mes chers amis,
my dear friends, the Leaders' Summit is coming to a close, but Canada's presidency will go on until the end of the year. Over the last few days, leaders made 7 commitments, which we call the Charleroi commitments, which are added to the communiqué, which covers a whole variety of subjects. We intend to continue the momentum we have achieved over the last few days and the progress that have been made up until now. At a time which is defined by the uncertainty which our world has to deal with, meetings like this will take on ever greater importance. They give us the opportunity to join forces and sometimes to settle our disputes. Facing the great challenges we have today, countries which have up until now had great economic success need to show a common front and promote the values that are at the very root of our success. I will leave the summit inspired by the discussions in which I participated and as convinced as ever of the need to work together to meet our common challenges. Once again, thank you for having been here in Charleroi. And I'll be very happy to answer your questions.
Cochrane, please.
Hi, Prime Minister. Hi there, Prime Minister. I'm wondering if you can answer this in English and in French. We have not yet seen the communiqué, but we're told by credible sources such as Chancellor Merkel that you have reached compromise language on trade and tariffs in this. I'm wondering, though, if you can square that with the comments that President Trump made as he was leaving, that the U.S. has been taken advantage of for decades. We are like the piggy bank that everybody is robbing and that ends, and two specific threats that it has to stop or we will stop trading with them being people who don't ally their trade practices with U.S. interests, and warning that if you retaliate against steel and aluminum tariffs, you'll be making a mistake. So my question is, how meaningful is this consensus if the president is making these kinds of threats on his way out of town?
The president will continue to say what he says at various occasions. What we did this weekend was come together, roll up our sleeves, and figure out consensus language that we could all agree to on a broad range of issues, whether it's making an economy that works for everyone, ensuring the inclusion of women and girls, being bold on protecting our environment, or moving forward in a meaningful way to prepare for the jobs of the future. These are the kinds of things that are common challenges across our countries and around the world, where anxiety about economic prospects of individuals and particularly of their kids leads to unpredictability and sometimes political uncertainty. We have come together to lay out where we agree, to highlight the need to continue to work together to serve the citizens who've elected us. I'm very pleased we came together on an ambitious joint communiqué at the end of this Charlevoix summit. Évidemment,
obviously, the president will continue to say what he says. But what we've achieved this weekend, together, the seven of us, was to gather together around an ambitious communiqué, setting out the shared challenges we have to support our middle classes, to continue to support our citizens, and to combat the anxiety and uncertainty that often goes hand in hand with fear about their pensionable age, the future of their children. So we've been looking at jobs for the future and concern about global security, economic growth that works for everyone, women, the environment. All of these discussions highlight the value of working together, of aligning ourselves with each other and continuing to support a system which has constituted a major success for many people, seeking always to bring more people into this economic success.
Sort of specific threats from the president today, saying that he would cut off trade with countries that don't do what the Americans want them to do, and that if you retaliate on steel and tariffs, as you plan to do on July 1st, that you're making a mistake. So how seriously do you take that threat, and does that change your plans to go ahead with the retaliatory tariffs?
I highlighted directly to the president that Canadians did not take it lightly. That the United States has moved forward with significant tariffs on our steel and aluminum industry, particularly did not take lightly the fact that it's based on a national security reason, that for Canadians who either themselves or whose parents or community members have stood shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers in far-off lands and conflicts from the First World War onwards, that it's kind of insulting. And I highlighted that it was not helping in our renegotiation of NAFTA, and that it would be with regret, but it would be with absolute certainty and firmness that we move forward with retaliatory measures on July 1st, applying equivalent tariffs to the ones that the Americans have unjustly applied to us. I have made it very clear to the president that it is not something we relish doing, but it is something that we absolutely will do, because Canadians were polite, we're reasonable, but we also will not be pushed around.
En français.
I pointed out to the president the extent to which, for Canadians throughout this country, this is an offence. It's an imposition of tariffs on steel and aluminium, claiming a rationale of national security. But Over our history, Americans and Canadians have so often stood shoulder to shoulder to defend the values that we both appreciate. I pointed out with regret that we would take that decision, but if the President continued to impose unfair tariff barriers on our steel and aluminum, then we would respond firmly and without any hesitation as of the 1st of July to impose equivalent tariffs. We were firm, we are polite and courteous,